What's up guys, welcome to the show. This week we have a really special guest. I'm really honoured and delighted to be sat next to Martin Roberts. You've probably seen him from the TV. He's been hosting and presenting on Homes Under the Hammer for 16 years. He's written some fantastic property books. He has some incredible training programs. So welcome to the show, Martin Roberts.
Well, it's nice to be here. How you go?
Fantastic. I'm really glad to be sat next to you. Some of the content that you put out there is just absolutely fantastic.
Well, you know, you talk about 16 years. It's hard for me to believe it's been that long, but it is, and we're carrying on. We're carrying on filming now, and the kind of things that I've seen over that time, well, you can only imagine, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how long have you been in property? You've been doing Homes and Hammer for 16 years.
So, you know, I like a lot of people, started out just doing the few little bits and pieces on the house I owned, okay? So I was born into a house where my dad was into his DIY, and he was always doing bits and pieces. So if something broke or if the kitchen needed being replaced, he would do it. So when I got my first house, I naturally did that. So I'd knocked through a few walls, I put in a new bathroom, put in a new kitchen. At the same time, I was starting my career in the media, so I was working for a local radio station. And over a 2-year period, I probably earned about £35 from doing the media stuff. Literally, I was paid £25 a week, okay, working in a radio station that I was working on. But at the same time, in that period, I did the work on the house and sold it, and it had doubled in value, and I made 25 grand. And that was when the penny dropped, and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, and I think this is the paradigm shift that people have to take. You know, property isn't just a roof over my head, it's something that can actually make me money and provide a genuine, fair, honest way of making a living. And I think once you make that switch, once you then learn the ways to do that properly, it's a great thing to do. But I was brought up in a house where it was all about property, and I think if you're brought up in that environment, then it still takes a bit of a leap, but at least you've got a few skills at your fingertips.
Yeah. So you made like 1,000 weeks profit.
Yeah.
By mistake. Almost. It's like an accident.
Yeah, pretty much. So I was like, oh. Right. How did that happen then?
And I think people, you can make a lot of money in property by mistake. So if you're deliberate, imagine how much more you can make, right?
Well, exactly. And you know, and there's almost taking the step to doing it again and again and again and again is the trick. And that's I guess what separates professional property investors from people who just do it on the odd occasion with their own house. And it is odd, isn't it? Because most people, if you ask them, would say, well, okay, what's made you the most money in your life? And they'd say, well, it might be actually my house has got loads in value. So why did you really do that once then? You know, I mean, but it's taking that step, and a lot of people don't.
Yeah. So are you actively buying properties today?
Yeah.
Because you've got some projects, really interesting projects going on. Tell me about the most interesting project you've personally been involved with.
So the one I'm really excited about at the moment is it's that what I would say is the holy grail of property investment, where I've got a bit of land which has got a derelict building on it, but it's outside the development boundary. It doesn't have any planning permissions. It doesn't have much more than a 1% chance of turning that into something that I could build on. But I'm currently putting in planning permission for creating something which is architecturally innovative and outstanding. So I have, along with my architect, over a few bottles of wine, come up with what I consider to be my dream house on a hillside in Devon. And in the next few weeks, hopefully, that is going before the planners, and they will see what I've created is a statement of architecture in 2019. And if I get that, the amount I paid for the land is absolutely piffling compared to what it's worth. So
that's great.
It is the holy grail.
Super exciting. So you've been doing Homes with the Hammer for 16 years. The great thing about that is you've been watching and learning from other people again and again and again and again. What would you say to someone? I mean, I read this property auction guide recently, and that's what encouraged me to reach out to you, because to be honest, this book is absolutely insanely good for anyone that's looking at buying from auction. It's not something that I've got loads of experience with auctions. I have done it. Talk to me a bit about 2019. There's different ways to get into property. There's auctions, there's estate agents, there's buy-to-let, there's development. What's the best strategies you think right now for property?
So I think if you were to sum up the property world in 2019 in one word, it would be uncertainty. I think out there, people, everybody, you, me, it's all like, I don't know. And yet, people who do it for a living and have been and lived through uncertainty before, or even lived through terrible times in like 2007, 2008, when it all went horribly wrong, right? We've lived through that. Then we are slightly more stoical about where we are. And you know, I think if you intrinsically believe in property as an investment strategy and as a thing to put your money in, then just because there's Brexit or no Brexit, just because, you know, the front page headlines are saying this and saying that, it doesn't matter. You've got to stick with what you believe in. And I believe long term, even medium term, as an investment vehicle, you can't beat property, okay? And so I'm carrying on, you know, regardless and through it all. And actually, there's a great quote from Warren Buffett, and he says that bad news is actually an investor's best friend because it enables you to buy a slice of the future at a discounted price. So while everyone else is going, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen, the property's going up, but you're going, I'll tell you what, well, I can't quite give you what you're asking, but I'll give you 25% less of that because I'm taking the risk here because, you know, everything might go horribly wrong. You know, you can turn any situation, I believe, if you're professional about how you do it, into a positive. You talk about auctions, right? The thing that still startles me about auctions is only 6% of the properties in the UK are sold by auction. So 94% of properties, land, commercial opportunities are sold at auction. So, and yet, if you know a bit more about auctions, which is one of the reasons why, you know, I'm delighted to do the show and also why I wrote the book, if you know more about them, then you can maybe cast aside some of your misconceptions, maybe throw aside some of your fears and realise that the positives outweigh the negatives, and there are some amazing bargains at auction. Not all auction properties are bargains, but a lot of properties that are sold at auction are bargains.
Yeah. One of the things I think about auctions is if you don't know what you're doing, auctions are a lot more risky than buying from an estate agent. Would you agree?
The thing about auctions is that it happens frighteningly quick.
Yeah.
Okay? And when you go to an auction and you put your hand in the air and you bid, that is a legally binding contract. You have exchanged contracts. Yeah. There's no thinking about it afterwards. So unless you get all your ducks in a row lined up before you bid, which you must do, finances, you've seen the property, you've checked the legal pack, you make sure that it makes sense intrinsically in terms of, is it fit for purpose, is the property okay structurally, all those kind of things. Unless you've got all those ducks lined up, then you are heading for a disaster. If you're buying through other means, some would say it's extremely annoying the way that the normal way of buying houses works, in that you sort of say, yeah, I'm kind of interested in that, and then you conduct surveys, you think about trying to get finance, you think about it for 6 weeks while the solicitor's on holiday, and 2 or 3 months later, eventually you sign on the dotted line. You've got lots of chance to make sure that you're doing the right thing. At auctions, you have to do all that preparation beforehand. But the plus side of it is if you get into the mindset of auctions and do all those things beforehand, then you benefit from the fact that 94% of people don't go to them. Yeah. So you can actually genuinely pick up some stuff that's like, literally 20, 30% under market value.
I know you run training programs.
Yep.
What do you think that you really need training programs in order to be successful? I mean, why is that important, do you think? So
I wrote a book called Making Money from Property, and out of that came the Making Money from Property training course through Legacy Education, and that's a 3-day course where we literally take people through, the beginning. Starting point, setting up your business all the way through to raising finance, to actually finding properties and da-di-da-di-da. And one of the reasons why I wanted to take that course on is a lot of people look at property and they think, I can do that. Why would I need to pay to go on a course? And that's like, just go down to the estate agent and hand over some money. You wouldn't say that about any other profession. You wouldn't stumble into being a doctor, or you wouldn't stumble into being a solicitor. You would invest in yourself, right? Yeah. And you would learn to do it properly. Because sure, you might be able to be successful, but the guarantee is pretty much on the side of you messing it up if you haven't learned how to do it properly and professionally. So that's what the training courses are all about. They teach you how to do it properly, and how to run it like a business and do it professionally. I think in some ways, the fact we're also familiar with buying property, it's almost like we take it for granted, but there's a big difference in between just buying a house and doing it properly as a business. It's a bit like the difference in between your son or daughter falling off their bicycle and you putting a sticking plaster on their knee. It doesn't mean that you can do a brain surgery operation,
Yeah.
So you need the training, and there's a lot of people out there who say, I'm not going to pay to learn. I was like, well, any money you put into it, you'll get back tenfold, because you are investing in yourself and your knowledge and following the advice of others who have been successful.
Yeah, I think that investing in property is probably the second best investment after yourself.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, and completely in any sphere, and so I'm a huge believer in it, and which is why I do it. And it's really nice when people have been on the training courses, or people have seen me on television, and they've said, we followed your advice, and now we are financially free, or we're whatever. And it's really lovely when you hear those stories of success as a result of what you've done. Do you know what I mean?
Something I asked you earlier off camera, which I thought was really interesting, was I said, when are you going to retire? When are you going to stop with the training and writing and running homes into the hammer? You don't need to do that. You're a very successful property investor. When are you going to stop? And your response was, you'll stop when you love doing it. And I think that's really profound.
Yeah, I mean, I am blessed that I do a job that I really love. I don't wake up in the morning and go, like everyone, you wake up in the morning and sometimes go, what have I got to get through today? But in general, I love what I'm doing. And I always said that I'd stop doing homes in the hammer when I arrived at a property. I went, I can't be bothered with this. And I even after 3,000 properties, which is what I've done, 16 years, each property still has something special about it. I still love property, so I love seeing what people do with stuff, and meeting people and their aspirations. And you are constantly surprised, and some things are very humbling. Just a couple of stories. One about the reasons why people do it. I met this one couple, and I said to them, why are you investing this money in this house? And they said, well, we support an orphanage in Africa. And we looked at the most effective way of us raising funds for that orphanage. And we decided that if we bought a property at auction and we did it up and we sold it and we put all the money that we made as a profit into that orphanage, it was a quick way of giving money to that charity, rather than rattling tins outside a supermarket or going on a bike ride for charity, whatever. So that's exactly what they did. And we went and we revisited them, and sure enough, they'd done up this bungalow, they'd sold it for 40 grand profit, and all that money had gone to this orphanage in Africa. So they made the profit and they gave it away. And everyone's reason for doing stuff, raising money, becoming financially free, can be different. Yeah. And they're all varied and they're all valid. But I think sometimes people think outside the box like that, and it stops you, and you make, oh my gosh, they're doing it to give it away. Ain't that great?
That's great.
And the other story, which was definitely sent me and the crew into tears, and I'm not being dramatic here, but I really have difficulty telling this story without getting quite upset. We were in and it's not upset in a bad way, but you'll understand when I tell it to you. We're in a house in Stockport, and I said to the lady, why do you buy this house? And she said, well, sadly my mum passed away 6 months ago, and in the latter stages of her life we used to sit in the hospice together watching you, talking about me, on television, and my mum said to me, I will die in the next few months, and I want you to take some of the money that I'm going to leave you, and I want you to do what this man pointed to me on the television is telling you to do. And there we were in this house in Stockport that she'd bought as a result of me on the telly, and it was almost like her mum's spirit was there, and she'd followed through what her mum's last wishes were, and it was like, oh my golly. Wow. That's when you realise the power that you have and the kind of way you affect people's lives. Well, that's a big privilege, really.
That's massive, absolutely massive. What's your purpose now? I know you're involved, you do a lot of charity stuff. What's your big reason now?
So I do a lot of charitable stuff. I consider myself quite privileged to be in the position I'm in terms of celebrity. I don't consider myself like a celebrity. I'm not into, in like Hello Magazine and stuff like that. But I am known, and I've been part of people's lives for quite a long time on television. And I think that does put me in a position of privilege in terms of being able to give back and help charities. So I do a lot of charity auctions. I help various charities, from Animals Age, which is a Moon Bear charity, and the NSPCC, obviously, which is the children's charity. And then that's sort of developed into my own charity, which is the Martin Roberts Foundation, which has been set up in the last couple of years. And its job is to support safeguarding and education initiatives for children and young people. And its first project is this book which I've written called Sadsville, and we're raising the money to give a free copy of this book, which encourages children to be aware of their own emotions and helps them deal with their own emotions at quite an early age. This is aimed at sort of 8 and 9-year-old children, in conjunction with the NSPCC, saying, let's learn a little bit about what emotions are and how we deal with those emotions, and recognise sometimes it's okay to be sad. Your holiday ends, your best friend moves away, maybe the pet dies. That is sad, but it's okay sad. And there's another thing, I call it good sad. It's not good, but it's part of life. And there's another thing, bad sad, which is, you're being abused, you're being bullied, you're under psychological pressure from somebody, whatever it might be. So it's getting children to recognise that. So literally, we're raising the money to give a free copy of this to every single 8 and 9-year-old in the UK. And so far, we've raised enough money to give out 7,000 books across Somerset, 22,000 books in Hampshire, and we're looking for people who can help us with a relatively small amount of money that we need. I mean, to cover the whole country is only 250,000 quid. And if you're picking off a county or an area, it's a lot less than that. And then it gets the word out there, and hopefully, I mean, my raison d'etre is this: I will never know if this stops some young person from being abused or worse, but on the assumption that if just one child is saved from abuse or the kind of stuff that the NSPCC see all the time, then as far as I'm concerned, that's priceless, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, and my job has been done. And that's what I call a legacy. This is a legacy. And the houses are great and all that other kind of stuff. But to actually be doing this means a lot to me.
And you're a father of 2 yourself?
So I've got a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I think if you are a parent, anything to do with abuse or any kind of pain that children go through, you want to, I think, even more passionate about trying to do whatever you can to stop that, because every child deserves a childhood, a happy childhood.
You've got a great heart. I love what you're doing, and that's why I wanted you on the show. So one of the things that you're really passionate about is helping people get into property so that they can then live out their legacy and they can then do their charity stuff.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone, or what, I'm going to ask yourself, if you were starting from scratch all over again and you only had, say, £50,000,
right,
2019, with Martin Roberts' brain, all your experience and knowledge, but just £50,000 starting again from scratch, what would you do with that £50,000?
So, I mean, I guess I'm going to say a predictable answer, which is I would look at the auctions. I really would.
Even start, I guess, your experience.
Because I see stuff, we were in South Wales last week. And there's 2 up, 2 down terraces, pretty decent stone built up, 2 up, 2 down terraces, 40,000 quid, okay? You could start with that and you could do that up, it's worth 70.
So hold on. Let's break this down. So you're going to put about 40,000 in.
Yeah.
You might even, if you pay a penny less, miss stamp duty.
Yes, exactly.
So 40 grand in, spend about 10 grand on it, and then it could be worth up to
75.
75. What do you do then? Sell it, refinance it?
So in an ideal world, I would refinance it,
especially in this market mode.
Yep, and because the yields you're getting in those kind of areas, on a £40,000, if even 50,000 investment house, you're looking at £495, £500
so
a week.
What's realistic then? What's realistic but possible to buy it for 40, spend 10 on it, and then refinance it? What, 75?
Yeah.
Is that realistic?
Yeah.
And then pull out what? All your money?
Yeah.
You do that regularly?
Yeah.
This book. This book, dude, this book's good. You know what? Auctions. I do auctions. I buy from auctions. I was telling you the story of the castle. I bought a castle last year.
I've never bought a castle.
Put it on your hit list. But the thing is, the thing that fears me about talking about auctions on my YouTube channel is that I know people that, you know what it's like. You get emotionally drawn in.
Yeah.
You've paid for the survey.
Yeah.
So you're invested.
Yeah.
Your emotions are high, your intelligence is low. You've got the auctioneer using all his little tricks in the book.
Yeah.
And what happens is people end up paying, you know the story. So that's why I fear. So that's kind of my warning on auctions, which is why it's so important to read this book.
Yes. Well, thank you. And you very kindly said it was one of the best property books you'd read.
I did. You know what? This book, by the way, I'm saying this from my heart, not because you told me to say it. This book is better than my book. I wrote a book.
Can't say that.
My book's very good, but this book, honestly, dude, this book is so good. I've made all my staff are now reading this book. My brother, who's CEO of the company, is reading this book, and you can get this on Amazon.
Yeah,
it's just
all from my website.
The Property Auction Guide. by Martin Roberts. It's just so good.
That's very kind of you to say so. So, but it is. So you're right. As I said before, the big thing about auctions is, you know, it's a one-way street in terms of when the hammer goes down, you are buying it. There's no thinking time. There's no, whatever's. Then's not the time to send the documents to the solicitors to have a look at to make sure they're all right. It's too late. There's no get-out clause, right, other than waving goodbye to your deposit. And the other thing was, if you pull out of an auction purchase and it's subsequently resold for less than you've agreed to buy it for, then you are liable for the difference. So it's a terrible, terrible, terrible situation to get into. So there's lots of caveats to it, which are, one, you need to get your finances in place, and you can get normal finance on an auction property, but obviously what's against you is your time, right? So you want to be looking at an agreement in principle based on you as a person, and then you will approach the mortgage companies and say, you know, this is the property I'm thinking of, and they will give you an idea of what they would potentially finance up to if you need to buy through using finance. You need to make sure that you've seen the property. You need to make sure that, yes, you've checked it out with somebody who knows what they're talking about. And a lot of people say, well, I might be looking at 10 properties, how can I have them all surveyed? Well, I say build a team of people around you who are on the journey with you, right? So yes, if you were to pay an average surveyor to go and survey a house for you, it's going to cost you 600, 700, whatever it might, 100 quid. And that gets expensive if you look at 10 properties. But if you're going to be doing this a lot, why not go to that surveyor and say, look, here's the deal. I pay you 200 quid for a survey. If it doesn't go to the whole shebang, I'll pay you 1,000 quid if it does. Right? So you get them in with you, taking part of it, right? Tip. Because you don't want to be going in there without having a survey.
No, it's madness.
So, but structure some deal with somebody, and they'll buy into that. Maybe a big firm of surveyors might not, but you get a local surveyor who comes on your journey with you. He says that's not enough. He says, okay, fine, 200 quid and 2,000 quid if I get them. You come to a point where they go, yeah, all right, I'll do that.
The great thing about the 2019 people's uncertainty right now is you can buy below market value properties, and you couldn't do that 2-3 years ago. 2-3 years ago, you couldn't do that.
From the front line, okay? This is really insider information, if you like, because obviously the show, Homes and the Hammer, is at all the auctions right now. So they'll be filming an auction in Birmingham today, an auction in London tomorrow, an auction in Cumbria the day after that. So we are actually there at the auction. So I can give you an overview of absolutely what's happening in 2019 at this point in 2019, and say that the auctions are a barometer of the housing market, and so not surprisingly it's a little bit sticky. The auctions are not, the numbers are not going up like they might have, especially in places like London. But I see that as a buying opportunity, because
for sure,
you've got less people bidding. Hallelujah. As long as you've done your research.
But your strategy as well, I'm doing that from estate agents and from Gumtree properties.
Right.
So to buy a property, add value to it and refinance it and pull all your money out, you don't need to go through auctions.
No, you don't. Absolutely not.
Auctions is just one way of buying a house.
Yeah.
It's the house that's ultimately good. I was telling you about my financial freedom challenge, and you were saying, how can you build a portfolio with nothing? That's ridiculous.
In 2 weeks. Well, how can you buy a house in 2 weeks?
Yeah,
whatever.
You're going to watch the video though, right?
Yeah, I'm going to watch the video.
You're going to watch the video. But anyway, one of the things that I'm an advocate for is that I believe that with the right knowledge, I believe that anybody, regardless of your financial situation now, you can start in property if you've got the right knowledge.
Yeah.
I started as a teenager. I didn't have anything, but I got myself on the right training programs, got myself a good power team, became educated, and I was able to build a portfolio starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? And do you think that, because if you had £50,000, if you could then buy a property and pull it all out, presumably if you didn't have the £50,000, you could just borrow it from somebody that did.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think people need to think laterally about that starting point, because that's the hardest thing for sure, right? Because people go, I haven't got any money. It's like, okay, right, well, that doesn't necessarily have to be a barrier. Do you know anybody, like relatives, friends who've got money sitting in a bank, or a group of people? Or how much do people trust you? Well, they trust me a lot. Okay, so you've got 5 mates who'd each give you 10 grand.
Yeah.
And you say, I'll give you a share of the profits. I'll do all the hard work. But this is my strategy. You put a business plan, but not to a bank, to your mates down the pub.
Yeah.
You know, and what are we faced at? What are their options for their 10 grand or their 50 grand or their 100 grand? Sitting in a bank or a building society, put it in stocks and shares, maybe. What kind of returns can they guarantee? If you can show them a business plan, maybe that's another way of getting money. Linking up with other people, forming partnerships.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that they're structured legally, because it's all right forming a partnership with a mate and go, yeah, they'll be fine, we'll share the costs, we'll share the profits. You need to have that written down and make sure that it's properly signed and then put away in a drawer. But, you know, link up with somebody to share the risks. You know, link up with somebody with complementary skills. Maybe you're really good at sourcing stuff on the internet. Maybe you're great, but actually you're really rubbish at dealing with builders or whatever it might be. Find somebody who has complementary skills and going with them. You know, there's lots of different ways of getting that first wodge of money, and I think that is what people sort of find as a huge barrier. I need to save £25,000 before I can even start.
Yeah.
And how long in this day and age, with all the draws on people's money, especially when you're starting out, how long is it going to take you to save 25 grand out of taxed income? A long time for most people.
I mean, most people's mindset is work hard, save money, put it in the bank, and then one day, if you're old enough and wealthy enough, buy a second property. But actually, that's completely skewed.
Well, there's me, right? Back when I was 19 years old, 20 years old, working, I thought, to build a career. And okay, the career's turned out really great, but I was earning £25 a week. And accidentally, at the same time, I was doing this thing without even thinking about it, doing up this house in Stockport. And that ended up generating me £25,000 in the same amount of time.
I love that story.
I'd earned, like, you know, 2,000 quid. So it's like, oh, hang on a minute. So without realising it, I was making the money through buying something. And what I always say to people as well is, what have you got that's not going to cost you anything, and something which first timers especially have got, and that's time and energy. So do as much as you can on doing a property yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You clearly can't do electric, you can't do gas, but most people could have a go at most of the stuff. There's so many, you know, videos on YouTube and books about how to tile a bathroom or whatever. You know, calling investors, because you don't have to pay for your time. The moment you start bringing in builders who are charging you whatever they're charging, then you, especially when you're starting out, all those all important bits of profit go by the wayside. So when you start out, especially, the thing you've got is your own time and enthusiasm. So don't try and find the perfect property. Find something that you can actually do up.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's of course everyone's got a different strategy, haven't they, in a different situation, but it's good advice. One of the things I often say is people think that the most important thing you need is money, then probably knowledge, and then the least important is network. And I think it's reverse. I think that your network and your power team is the most important, and your knowledge and your money. Money's we're living in a resourceful place.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who've got money but don't know what to do with it. I mean, in the nicest possible way. So if you can go, but you need to be professional about it, and that comes back to the training, right? It's like approaching it professionally.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a business. It isn't just, you know, this isn't just for fun. You're doing this properly. You need to set it up in your venture in a professional and business-like manner, and you need to run it in a professional and business-like manner. And if you don't, then how can you expect it to be successful?
One of the common questions I get asked is if you've got money sitting in your own house and you've got equity in your own house, can you use that, and how do you use that to then invest in property? So
the most important thing in all of this is that you shouldn't do something that makes you lose sleep at night. Okay, you shouldn't. I mean, there are people who take huge risks and maybe it pays off, but there's probably a lot of people currently hitting the Southern Comfort at 11 o'clock in the morning who took too much risk. So when it comes to taking money out of an existing asset, you need to be really sure that that does not put you under too much financial pressure. However, why should you sit in the happy knowledge that you've got a house that's worth 100 grand that you owe no money on, when maybe you could draw out 50 grand of that and still afford the mortgage if all else fails? What's the worst case scenario? If everything went completely wrong, could I still afford that roof over my head? Which, pare it all back, you might have a portfolio of 100 properties. Actually, you only need one. That's for you and your family. So as long as you can always end up with one that's safe, then everything else, follows that. But with that caveat, why have that money sitting dead in that property when you could take it out and invest it in other properties or projects? And that, it's called gearing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's where okay, well, I've got a house that was 100 grand, but maybe if I had if I took out 75% of that money, I've now got 75 grand, and then I put 25 of each of those 75 grand into a £50,000 house. Okay, 50,000 grand, £50,000, you're going to have difficulty getting a mortgage on it. But let's just, for example, for the sake of this example, 25,000 of that into 3 new projects, which you finance into the tune of 50% if they're 50 grand each. You are really using that money and also diversifying, maybe in terms of the kind of properties you buy, diversifying your risk, spreading your risk. And still being in a situation where if it all went horribly wrong, you'd still have your house with a 75% mortgage on it, but you could afford that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think, because I often see people that have got no mortgage on their house, but then they're working 50 hours a week for 2 grand a month.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I can't do this. I hate it. And it's like, well, just use that money better, So it really makes sense. All right, final, as we begin to wrap up, final words of advice and wisdom then. What would you advise your 25-year younger self? I don't know how old you are exactly, so
a lot older than you.
When they were starting out, what would be the best piece of advice, property-wise, that you could give your younger self who's just starting out?
I remember working on a hospital ward as a hospital radio reporter, and I used to go around the wards, and one of the wards I had to go around was ones where it was later life wards, and I met this guy, and he said some words which I thought were absolutely so profound that they've stuck with me since. And they come with lots of caveats, but he said, do it now. Do it now. Whatever it is, do it now. You know what, most of us put things off because it's a lot easier to put it off than deal with it and do it now. But you know what, if you've got some piece of paperwork you don't want to do on your desk, you're going to shuffle it around and go, I'll do it tomorrow. And each time you put it down, you've created yourself a whole shed load more stress. If you're thinking about buying a property, you're going, oh gosh, well, hasn't completely ticked all the boxes and I don't know, and maybe, I'll have another cup of coffee and a hobnob. We'll deal with it next week. Do it now. Do it now. Whatever it is, get it done. The caveats are, make sure you're making the right decision, you've thoroughly researched it, you've got all your ducks lined up, and to the best of your ability, you're doing the right thing. But don't fear failure, because it happens to us all, and if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Do your best, and don't let the fear of failure stop you doing anything, because otherwise you failed.
I love that. That was powerful. The books, the charity stuff, I'm sure everyone's going to get a copy of your property auction guide. They should.
So my website's martinroberts.co.uk.
Awesome.
And all the details of what I'm doing is on there.
How do we support this?
So, well, if you're a business or just somebody who thinks this is a project that you'd like to be involved in, get in contact with me or the foundation. It's the Martin Roberts Foundation, martinrobertsfoundation.org.uk, and you can sponsor, £1,000 here, £2,000 there. If you want to sponsor a county, it's like 10 grand. Anything you can do to help me get this into the hands of children who it could help, then I'll be eternally grateful.
I'm really grateful for you giving up your time, coming all the way down to our offices in Wolverhampton, and appreciate your friendship, and thank you ever so much, Martin.
It's my great pleasure.
Cheers.